it's not just the solo challenge that's missing. It's the ability to do anything solo that's meaningful. Because there's basically nothing you can do in the game that doesn't require you to party up, which at the minute I think is, especially at the end of a patch, a frustrating experience.
Yeah.
Because trying to get into a heroic group for Sanctum is just not very fun. It's a massive pain in the ass no matter what you're doing. And then, basically unless you're mythic geared, then same goes for, there's no short-term experience of Mythic Plus that feels meaningful. And also trying to get a party again also kind of blows if you don't have a big score.
Yeah.
So you're kind of completely disincentivized from playing whatsoever. Then you just kind of have nothing to do. Unless you want to go and farm old stuff, but that's not always a meaningful thing to do. Unless there's a specific thing you're interested in, and then you go and try for it, and that takes you half an hour. And if it doesn't drop, fuck you, come back next week. So it's certainly, it's been interesting trying to want to play the game a little bit, just, to try and sort of keep some sort of flame burning there with it, and just logging in fuck this. There's nothing I can really do in the half an hour before I'm going to bed, or the an hour and a half before I'm going to bed, without having to get a party and, I guess, gamble a bunch of time.
Whereas I guess for you can just instantly go into FF, do some roulettes, and kind of get what you want.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, which WoW doesn't really have as much, because they've kind of hyper put all of that into the Mythic Plus system.
Yeah.
And, there is just that bit of me that does kind of think would a Mythic Plus with a solo queue and a rating work? I mean, there's other games that use solo queue and a rating, and you can maybe assemble a party, and sure, it's probably not going to be viable for super, super high-end Mythic Plus key pushing, but frankly, I don't give a shit about that.
Yeah.
If you can just give me an average or above average group, and you have a thing where if somebody's a dickhead and they get a negative report, they're putting the naughty boy queue. Yeah. Which I think some other games do that. They have the fucking penal colony queue that you go into if you're a dickhead.
Oh, the Dota version's so rough.
Stuff like that, yeah. Well, man, would that not be good? Because it could just sort of mean, you hit the button and away you go. Yeah. Now, I suppose there could be some rough stuff with the Keystone system, but if they could make that work, I actually think that would rapidly increase some of the playability. And then there's that thing, though, if you make everything match-made and on a queue, you could then sort of argue, well, okay, that really diminishes the social playing of the game. And it's like, oh, shit, yeah, I get that. But a bit late for that. Times have kind of changed. Now we really form our groups in Discord outside of the game rather than inside of the game. Therefore, does it make sense to kind of optimize around maximal playability, which Final Fantasy XIV has done, where, in FF14, raiding can be a multi-hour commitment a week, or it can be a very short commitment because you go in, you don't kill a bunch of trash. You generally go in, you're kind of straight at the boss.
Yeah.
Right? And, the queuing is way more granular as well. So I wonder if there are things that Blizzard can do there. Because surely the kind of group formation, social group formation, that's going to happen far more around the highest end Mythic Plus keys that people probably wouldn't be doing in the matchmaking system anyway.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because a lot of it would be very, very difficult to communicate to players without it basically shitting all over the established players and existing players. And obviously, you could argue that World of Warcraft maybe has had a problem of trying to stick too much to a specific type of player or a specific group of players and have let a lot of other players kind of by the wayside as a result. And then that group turned out to be bigger than I think Blizzard thought.
Yeah.
So you can argue kind of that, but you can also look at the other side and go, well, if you were a happy player with the game, you would feel betrayed if it drastically changed. So I think that would be a very difficult thing for them to actually do internally. But also they do need to do, I think, some drastic change. And I'm hoping that because there's so much granularity in World of Warcraft classes and specs and talents and gear and stuff like that, that not being able to select who you play with causes massive problems in terms of viability in cases, and that's why they're so afraid of PvP solo queue. But they are looking into situations or solutions for that, and they are testing them out. So I'm hoping that we maybe do get something with the kind of Mythic Plus system that's a little less... I guess I would describe it as less capable, and this is weird because I usually would blame Blizzard for thinking this way, but need to build a system that's aggressive, that lets people play, but it's defensive and doesn't let people kind of self-design the community to be a bad experience for people. Because obviously selection for like Mythic Plus rating or old RIO score and flavor of the month specs really damages it all. So, and they clearly have proven that they're not able to do that via balance. They're not able to solve that problem. I think that they seem to have almost given up on trying a lot of the time, where they just kind of go, well, that's dead for this season. Shit, whatever. We'll just have to deal with it. So I think like being aggressive and having a solution there might actually work, which obviously, as you say, is just a queue system and sort of hope it works. And if it doesn't work, then kind of like make that the big play and then iterate on that for improvement. Because I think the kind of self-getting together as groups is, well, there's definitely solutions to that problem as well, but also it is a problem.
I think it's just that thing now that FF14 has expanded its position in the market. A lot of people who are endgame FF14, they want to do some progression. They can just go do their roulettes, you know, do their stuff for their tomestones. And if you only have an hour and a half of video game to play, in FF14, I think your progress can be a lot more guaranteed. It honestly, it has, I don't want to say it has a more skilled player base, but I think a lot of people would feel, especially going into some of those trials blind with other people going to the trial blind, I really feel like it's night and day to World of Warcraft experiences that I've had. So like the combination of that and how you can basically just go and queue for a boss that you just want to go and do because it's, you know, it's decently granular. I mean, that means if somebody has a limited amount of time in one evening, chances of one game wasting their time is a lot higher than the other one. Therefore, FF14, for a lot of people, it's going to win. Yeah.
I mean, my experience of that has been unbelievable compared to World of Warcraft. Like I talked about in that video on the gaming channel, which is like the experience of doing those extremes was wild. People were completely patient. Most people were patient. I was generally one of the weaker members of the group overall, which I was kind of surprised by. Some of that might just be the parties I ended up with. But I was like, man, this is really interesting that it's like we're here for success and people are patient enough, but they're not here for a guaranteed kill. They're here for because the experience of learning it is a little bit shorter because you just kind of go and go and go. And mechanics aren't designed like Savage mechanics where they do require a lot of coordination. They require some coordination, and it's satisfying enough to do that I found that it was just a pretty clean experience. Like practice parties were just, the concept of them blows my mind. And if they ever existed in World of Warcraft, I never saw them effectively.
They do exist, they're just, I think, a lot more rare. So it's interesting stuff, and I just wonder how it's going to inform the next World of Warcraft expansion, because look, FF learnt from WoW. WoW needs to learn from FF. That's you know how it works with games. Really, they should learn from each other.
So that's actually 1 second. That's actually an interesting point. Poke says if WoW made it easy to queue up for all the content, Blizzard are scared that the complete lack of content will become an even bigger issue than it already is. And I would say absolutely not, because FF14 on a expansion per expansion basis doesn't really have that much content in the end game combat sense. The expert roulette is literally 3 dungeons. You queue for expert roulette, you get 1 of 3 dungeons. That's it. But they're fun, so it's fine. Same with, you know, there's 4 raid bosses, there's 2 extremes.
Wow, ships.
That's very little, but people are happy to do it because it's designed to be very fun. It's always fun to do them. Even when they get, you know, kind of rote in memory, it's still satisfying to do. So you're kind of in for like a comfy experience if you're doing expert roulettes, unless you're a tank pulling wall to wall and your healer's a bit shit, think it's a bit sweaty. But generally speaking, it's like, yeah, there's not an awful lot of content, like literally, but your satisfaction with each of that content is substantially better, and you play so much more of it. And then you also have the evergreen content, which is old content you can do at a moment's notice if you feel like it. But I think the takeaway there is that the barrier to engaging in that content is so much lower that then people just engage with it and they're like, yeah, sure. I would, be able to get through maybe 2 or 3 dungeons in roulette before I'd get one mythic group, realistically. And I think that's one of the biggest differences to gameplay experience overall. And we kind of turned accidentally into talking about FF14 versus World of Warcraft, but it is a World of Warcraft thing of like...
Well, that's how WoW can learn.
Yeah,
and that's a crazy thing. Like, WoW's got so many more bosses than FF.
Yep.
That's that thing you could maybe say FF, like its average boss is maybe a bit better.
Yeah.
For some would say, but then again, WoW does have way more bosses, so it's going to be harder to make each one as good.
Tons more.
But I think that does mean that if WoW could maybe learn from some of that FF stuff, it could probably get a lot of good results. I mean, for me anyway, a lot of people really like things like Sarth. I keep on bringing this up. You know, people like things like Sarth. So I think it would be, you know, great. I mean, imagine if with world bosses, I mean, they're not gameplay. Yeah. Why bother designing a world boss? You may as well just put a big health bar there that does nothing.
Yeah.
Or, you know, just arbitrarily kills, say, 10 people a minute and just you have no control over it. It may as well be it.
Yeah.
So instead, stop making those.
Yeah.
Give us a trial with an extreme mode every patch.
Yeah.
Where it's like, instead of where we would have done a world boss, we're now going to give a solo queue boss that drops pretty good gear. Or maybe not solo queue, whatever type of way it works, that you can just go and do. And I think that would actually be brilliant for World of Warcraft.
Yeah, that's the awkward thing where I feel like, you know, if you had the Raid Finder? What the fuck? Jesus Christ, man, you can't speak today. Raid Finder window. If you had the Raid Finder window and it had access to content that was fun to do, you know, if you could queue up for Sarth and you could scale down.
Oh man, that'd be great.
That would be pretty sweet. Obviously, the problem then is LFR has a difficulty that people are used to, so they'd have to like figure out a way to revamp that. Probably adding the difficulty windows to LFR, which is then a massive problem because then people are saying, "Oh, you've ruined the game because you can now just hop into a thing as a group," which is a vast sort of difference to how things work. But the idea of almost like a Crucible of Storms, like Crucible of Storms was great as far as most people are concerned. So if you just fire one of those in, just fire the last boss in. Fuck the first two. Fire the last boss in. Even use something that's ready, use an existing tile set. Use an existing fucking mob for all anyone cares.
Hey,
just make them cool.
The anniversary event. Remember the anniversary?
Oh yeah,
raid?
shit, yeah.
They're clearly able to grab a bit of. I mean, I don't know if they like legit completely remade those fights again. Like, I mean, actually, they weren't able to just do a lot of asset reuse. Maybe they just had to re-script the fight to work with the new thing and, to make it like its own new little mini raid.
Course, yeah.
I don't know how that would work, but it would be pretty sweet. So it's just that sort of thing. Look, both games can learn from each other. And if all the games learn from each other, then both games get better and then everyone is happy. So, there's kind of no need for a big, like, us versus them kind of angry thing to go on. We may as well just kind of be chill, not give a shit, and just talk about like things as as they are without all the pretense.
Man, that's a really good idea. Farts. Oh, I'm such a chad. Anyway, yeah, they could do a VOA or TB style raid. Yeah, Vault of Archivon. Obviously, it had the which was really cool at the time. I think they wouldn't do it again because of too many downsides to it that are like they'd be defensive around. But obviously, I love the PvP control aspect of it and the fact it dropped PvP gear. But like the idea of a VOA or Tolbrad again would be really cool in terms of just, hey, here's content. It's just here it is. Do you really care about VOA if you're trying to follow the epic story of the main patches of Wrath of the Lich King? No, but also it's some content. It was something for you to do, when you logged in, if you hadn't done it that week, and if it was, if you had control of Wintergrasp. I was like, yeah, these bosses, are they really complex? No. Are they pretty fun because the mechanics are okay? Yeah. Pretty sweet, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, so man, it's interesting stuff.